Hey y'all, Boogie Night here, how's it going? And I apologize for the fact this review is a week and a half late. But I also promise y'all it is worth the wait. I've talked about in the past my opinion on the 4 types of horror movies. Essentially, the atmospheric, the jump scare, the gore fest, and the schlocky, trashy one. But what if you took 2 of those and combined them into one cohesive movie? Well, the movie that I watched last Tuesday with Larian, Kowo, and Morges definitely fit that bill. And I'm talking about a movie called Dagon. Now, before I get into the meat of this entry, I want to take a second to thank Larian for his recommendation of this movie, because it was a lot of fun. Is it top tier horror? Hell no way. But it's definitely something that I intend to watch again down the pike, and maybe even buy it. I'm not sure yet. So with that being said, let's dive right into it. Now, Dagon is a 2001 horror movie directed by Stuart Woods and is based upon the HP Lovecraft short story A Shadow over Innsmouth. Now, if you haven't read A Shadow over Innsmouth, first of all, I highly encourage you all to read it. I mean, it's probably his most popular story next to Call of Cthulhu. I'm sure there's short stories, or at least free copies of it online. And I also believe Wayne June, aka the Ancestor from Darkest Dungeon, has an audio narrative of it on YouTube. In fact, I might look into that. I don't know yet. So with that being said, why did I like this movie? Well, first of all, I do want to say it was because Stuart Gordon directed it, and it was a complete departure from his other works. The movies that I've seen by Stuart Gordon usually consist of the ultra schlocky B-movie sci-fi types. And those 2 that I actually own on DVD are Robot Jocks and Space Truckers. And what I mean by schlocky sci-fi, it's the types of movies that definitely do not take themselves seriously. And I had a blast watching them, and I think Morges had a blast watching them. So when I saw that Stuart Gordon directed a horror movie, I was kind of scratching my head, not sure if this would be a good movie or was only a road that goes to bad places. But fortunately, he succeeded in doing a very well done horror movie. Secondly, I do want to talk about the atmosphere to this movie, because it was incredible. I mean, it started out below sea level, no pun intended, but gradually built until it took off like a rocket at the end. I mean, there is one scene towards the very end that definitely impacted all 3 of us. In fact, Morges, Kowo, and I said some variation of, wow, that scene was intensely crazy. And to which Larian also chimed in, that scene still makes him uncomfortable. There's also scenes of the main character kind of hiding out from the antagonist, which I'll get into all of that during the plot at the very end of this review. And they pass several feet from his face, and it was easily with an eye shot, and you can see him cowering, you see him fearful. I felt his fear, and then the sense of relief that he was not seen. But also to throw into that, there was still that little bit of schlocky horror behind it. And by schlocky horror, think of a Sam Raimi movie, like something out of The Evil Dead, like Army of Darkness or whatnot. And an example of that is the main character is getting ready to engage in doing the nasty with this one beautiful woman. Things are getting pretty hot and heavy. He starts to lift up her dress, and instead of legs, he finds out she has tentacles. Tentacles. And he catapults himself off the bed like any sensible human being would do. But she's trying to reason with him to make him stay with her, and he just leaves without letting her finish. He just storms out the door. The only thing that would have made this scene more epic would have he made the essential "Bye, Felicia" joke. And I just realized not everybody is going to get the "Bye, Felicia" meme, so I'll actually put a link to the Wikipedia article in the description below. And another part that added to that schlockiness was there's a scene when people are trying to reason with him again about the cult that they're in. Yeah, spoiler alert, cult. The cult of Dagon. And normally kind of quiet and reserved main character shouts out "fuck Dagon" at the top of his lungs, and at this point I almost did a spit take because I did not expect that to come out of his mouth. I expected something a little more aggressive and a little more quiet. But when you take the atmospheric tension that once again escalates in an hour and a half movie with the silly schlocky side of it, it was very interesting, but it didn't ping pong back and forth, so you didn't get mood whiplash. It was an excellent blend of the two, and you didn't get more schlock than horror. So that's why I'm calling this a horror movie and not a horror comedy movie. Whew. Sorry, it's warm in here. Had a power outage earlier today. There's nothing to talk really about the cinematography, and I know I talk a lot about that in other reviews, so I'm just going to kind of gloss over it, but that still didn't detract to why this movie was so good to begin with. So with that being said, let me go into the special effects. For a 2001 horror movie that normally engages a lot of the fur and the fangs or the shadows or the demons, this was kept to a very minimalistic level. I mean, yeah, there was a little CGI with the tentacle legs on the woman, but the rest of it was done with very excellent prosthetics. And I think that is something that is largely overlooked in horror movies, or any movie for in general. I'm not sure why, but I think when you get back to the basics and you do something that is simple but well put together, it makes the movie more believable. Now, I'm not saying that Dagon was a believable movie, God no, but still it added to the overall atmosphere. From the voices to, once again, the costumes to the some minimalistic special effects. I can only count on one hand the number of times I saw CGI or special effects in general. The rest of it was good old-fashioned goodness, homegrown, with a little bit of gore thrown into there for the mix, but even the gore scenes were believable, or at least visually believable. So I think that was very excellently done. Once again, going back to robot jocks and space truckers as a baseline for this kind of thing, those movies obviously exuded a lot of CGI and special effects, and those were very, very just, yeah, okay, that's happening, it was a whole spread of that kind of thing. And that also ties into why I think Stuart Gordon did a good job with this, because he went back to the well, and by back to the well I mean base camp, and employed that. I think Stuart Gordon tried to stick as much to A Shadow over Innsmouth, the atmosphere, the plot, that kind of thing, because it succeeded with flying colors. I mean, I was worried about the special effects at the beginning because, once again, Stuart Gordon as a director, I expected a lot more. Oh, great. So it was very well done. So I appreciate that, and I'm sure the Lovecraftian fans who watch this movie can appreciate it as well. The third reason I like this was the evolution of the main character. Now, I say the main character and not characters because it was only him for the majority of the movie. I think maybe 10 minutes in the beginning and 5 minutes at the end did you actually see the rest of the characters in general. There was a minor character who joined up with him about halfway through, and once again, I'll get into all this during my description of the main plot. The main character, Paul Marsh, there's another tie into A Shadow over Innsmouth because the main family involved with that storyline was the Marsh family. So I think that was a very excellent tie into it. Now, Paul Marsh started out as kind of a very, very snobby, stuck-up stockbroker who was very happy that he was living the rich lifestyle with his girlfriend and just basically having the time of their lives. And it was at this point that I actually looked, well, not really looked, but told our chat, he's going to be the only one who survives this because he's a complete douche nozzle. Like, I hated him from the beginning. And the reason I say he's the one that survived is because I think back to Eli Roth movies, and it's always the douche nozzle that survives, which drives me up the wall. Now, obviously, when he gets into the whole horror aspect of it and the tension starts to build up, he goes into fight or flight mode. Of course, that would be anybody's thing, is you want to survive. But he does so in a way that is tactical and logical. He thinks about his actions. He stops running and starts thinking, I can do this, I can do this, I can go there. God, that was loud, sorry. And from that point, he turns into like a man of action. He's like, okay, I'm gonna do this to achieve what I have to. Not really in a Machiavellian sense, but it's getting the info on the enemy. A very Sun Tzu, know thy enemy kind of thing. But at the tail end, oh my Godfrey. He basically turns into, the Arnold Schwarzenegger last action hero. So once again, like the atmosphere in the movie, it was a build-up, but it was a believable build-up, and I think that was very excellently executed by the actor. Sorry, I forget his name. So I appreciate that immensely. And I think a lot of movies don't have that evolution, or at least modern movies don't have that evolution. It's always kind of a plateau sort of thing, or it's a kind of a sine wave, or a straight up. It's never this believable curve of character build-up. And that always detracts from the overall plot of a movie because it's so unbelievable, at least in my opinion. So, very much enjoyed that part. Now, finally, the last thing I want to talk about, of course, is the plot and how many tie-ins to A Shadow over Innsmouth there are. Obviously, as I said before, the main character, Paul Marsh, tie-in right there. It starts out that he's on a boat with his girlfriend and a couple of their friends. And they're snooty, they're stuck up, they're bitching back and forth to each other like a weird married quadruple. And they run into a storm. And throughout the storm, they're afraid they're going to sink, and they see a village on the horizon. A very, kind of, in my opinion, a very Mediterranean, kind of Grecian isle, which made me think of Island of Death for a second, God forbid. And they basically run aground. So Paul and his girlfriend decide to go ashore to get help, while the other couple stay behind. And during this time, the ship starts to break apart by some unknown force. It is definitely not natural how it does it, but it's done so in a very subtle way, which ties back into the special effects or lack thereof. So they go ashore and get to a church where they encounter a priest who doesn't speak their language. I think it might have been Spanish, but Spanish is not my second or third language. To get help. So the priest agrees to get help to go back to the boat, or what's left of it, but one of them has to stay ashore. So the girlfriend stays ashore and tries to find a hotel, and it's a very dilapidated, dingy hotel, which is another big Lovecraft influence, because a lot of the towns in Lovecraft stories are dilapidated, antiquated, and just overall stuff you would not get involved in. She tries to use the phone or convince the innkeeper to use the phone, but she's abducted by several people. And that is the most of the last we'll see of her until the very end. So Paul sees that the boat is torn asunder and there's no survivors, and goes back into town, obviously to look for his girlfriend. The innkeeper obviously isn't saying anything, so he just says, you know what, let me just get a room for the night, I can look for her later on. So he goes to a completely nasty, dilapidated room. We're talking the bed doesn't even have sheets or a quilt. It was just a bare bones mattress, and that was it. But during the time he's trying to rest, he hears a lot of noises outside. And he looks outside, he sees a very, very odd group of people resembling a hybrid between fish and person. The biggest tie-in to Shadow over Innsmouth was the fish people. So he bars the door and they're trying to get to him for reasons not known to him, but once again, I'll talk about that in a minute. He escapes, he's on the run from them, and after a lot of creepy and atmospheric scenes, he happens upon the only human left in town, a man named Ezekiel. Sorry, like I said, it's still pretty hot here. So he's not really threatening, but he's forcibly asking Ezekiel what the hell happened. So he goes into the backstory of the evolution of the fish people. Another major tie-in to A Shadow over Innsmouth was that the original town had fallen on very bad times. It's a fishing village. Like I said, it's got a very Grecian island kind of thing to it. Fell on hard times and made a deal with basically the devil, with Dagon, for wealth that would save their crumbling, dilapidated town. And Dagon does this and grants them a lot of wealth, as long as they convert to a cult dedicated to him instead of the Christian religion they currently were. But there's also a much deeper, more sinister cost. In exchange for his gold, plentiful fishing, and that kind of thing, women have to be sacrificed to Dagon so he can impregnate them. I know, it's kind of disgusting when you think about it in a nutshell, isn't it? But beggars can't be choosers, so they agree. And that is why the entire town are fish people, because Dagon is essentially a fish god. A very, very evil fish god. So Paul essentially makes a deal with Ezekiel for Ezekiel to help him. And he shows him how to get to one of the only forms of transportation in the town. And he distracts the fish people while Paul tries to get away. It fails miserably down the pike, and he's forced to make shelter. Now, while he's running through the shelter, he happens upon the tentacle-legged woman, which was actually a woman that he saw in his dreams several times. I think this dream happened twice throughout the movie, and it was a dream where this mer person with very sharp teeth was leading him down a deep dark hole. And he hides behind the door into her room while one of the fish people is trying to find out where he is, and she tells him, or that person, that she hasn't seen him. This is where the bifoliation scene happens. So he flees through the town, and is eventually captured by the fish people. He's taken to a jail cell where he meets up with his girlfriend as well as one of the female character on the boat. And it turns out she was already impregnated by Dagon. And the girlfriend is next. Ezekiel tries to break them out, but it goes horribly, horribly awry. The other female person kills herself because she's screaming the whole time. She's like, I can feel it, it's growing inside me. Which was very, very, just the tone of her voice was very disturbing in my opinion, because I sensed her distress. I sensed her terror. Not just because of the fact she was knocked up by a fish god, but because if you can feel something growing inside you, I think like a chest burster from the Alien series. So they take the girlfriend away to one place, and Ezekiel and Paul get taken to another part. And this was where the grisly scene happened that made Koo, Morges, and I get very, very disturbed. And that's also the same scene that Larry and Hat is uncomfortable watching. It is a scene where Ezekiel is flayed alive. Yeah, think about that for a hot second. So he's flayed alive, and it's about the time that Paul is next. In bursts in tentacle-legged woman. who turns out she's a queen or a priestess of this fish colony. And she slithers in. I mean, it like on two tentacles. She's writhing in. I mean, it almost looks like a moray eel. I mean, from the top half, she's completely human and very beautiful. I will say that right then and there. But the special effect tentacles, I'm not really a seafood person, let alone a mollusk. Or not a mollusk, whatever. What are eels? I think they're cnidarians. I could be wrong. Whatever. Anywho, she slithers in and convinces them to try and let him go if she stays on the island and marries her. Well, he disagrees, but manages to break out before he's flayed alive and takes down the rest of the fish people. And this is when Last Action Hero kicks in. He finds out where his girlfriend is about to be sacrificed to Dagon so he can knock her up as well. Fish sex. I don't even want to think about what that's like. So, sorry, mini vomit there. So he bursts in on the scene and basically starts with a makeshift incendiary device and sets as many fish people on fire. And he also succeeds in knocking out the priestess and tries to rescue his girlfriend. But too little, too late. And this is where the plot twist at the end happens. The Fish Queen, once again, still tries to reason with him and be like, look, I was the one that sent you those dreams. It was me. And we can be together forever in paradise. So what does he do? He tries to set himself on fire. And he comes damn near close. He inflames the Human Torch and falls into the well where the girlfriend was sacrificed to Dagon. And she decides to jump in after him. Well, it turns out, I'm not sure how, this wasn't really explained, he develops gills, like the end to the shape of water, and they swim off into the hole together. I mean, the ending was quite abrupt, in my opinion, because I was expecting this, I've got nothing left, I'm just going to set myself on fire, and she mourns the loss or anything like that. I don't know. But seeing him after this entire movie fighting the fish people and just giving into it, that was the one thing that made me just kind of shake my head and go, nope, that wasn't even schlocky, that was just textbook. Once again, in my opinion. But with all the other things that happened in this movie, I very much enjoyed it. And you don't have to be a horror movie buff to like this movie, because like I said, there's some silliness to it, there's some action to it, but nor do you have to like it if you're not an HP Lovecraft fan, because this is a standalone movie, and there are a lot of Lovecraft influences, but it still goes well by itself. Check it out. I mean, you can get it on Amazon, you can rent it, I doubt it's at Redbox, you can probably get it through Netflix, you can probably rent it through YouTube. There's a lot of means to watching it. So, once again, my thoughts on it don't matter. I want to hear your comments about this below. Whether you're part of the Critics Couch, whether you're watching this, I want to hear what your thoughts are on the Dagon if you've seen it, or if this review has impacted you to go check it out. Now, before I close out this review, I do want to say one quick thing. If you like the Sonic Boogie project and you want to check out more, I do have a Twitter account as well as a public Discord channel. And I will put links to both of those in the description below, as well as a link to my Patreon account if you are so inclined. But with that being said, once again, I hope you enjoyed this review. Other than that, y'all have a fantastic evening, and I'll catch you on the flip side, alright? Peace.